Okay, I think it's 7 o'clock. Welcome back. Long time no see. I call the meeting to order. Tonight, the School Board of the City of Manassas is meeting June 23rd, 2020, virtually as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2A3 due to restrictions on public gatherings issued by the state and federal governments. We'll start off with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Mrs. Garza.
Yes, Chairman Williams. Chairman Williams.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Keeper.
Here.
Mr. Demaria.
Here.
Mr. Albrecht.
Here.
Mrs. Seberg.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here.
Mrs. Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Garza. Appreciate that. Next, we haven't done this in a while. Are there any additions and corrections to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Yes, I would like to request technology and communication be added to the consent agenda.
Very well, sir. Thank you very much. We will do that. Next, announcements and spotlights tonight. The first announcement and spotlight we have is the LGBTQ Pride Proclamation, and I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Stevens if she doesn't mind.
Don't mind at all. I had to move a cat. Hold on. Okay. So I'm going to read the first couple lines and then the very ending because it is kind of a long proclamation and we have a lot going on this evening. So, whereas Manassas City Public Schools is committed to creating an inclusive, safe, caring, and challenging learning environment viewed through an equity lens, and whereas the City of Manassas recognizes the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas the Manassas City Council has adopted a Pride Proclamation annually since 2017, and whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia passed the Virginia Values Act prohibiting discrimination in public places against members of the LGBT community, and now, therefore, the Manassas City School Board proclaims June 2020 to be LGBTQ Pride Month and urges our citizens and community members to recognize the value of and contributions made by LGBTQ staff and students and actively promote the principles of equality and liberty. Be it further proclaimed that the Manassas City School Board urges all to respect and honor our diverse community and celebrate and build a culture of inclusivity and equity, both during Pride Month and the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stevens. I appreciate that. And it is Pride Month, June 2020, and June every year now. So I'm glad and proud that we are having our own Manassas City Public Schools Pride Proclamation. And I thank Ms. Stevens and Ms. Seberg also for working on this proclamation together with me and for the board for signing off on it, so to speak. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is an affirmation condemning racism. And a lot of school systems in Virginia are doing a similar affirmation. Because this is kind of long and I don't want to take up our entire time reading it, I'm going to just read a few parts of it, but the affirmation again is condemning racism. The beginning says, whereas members of the school board of the city of Manassas, as well as the Manassas City Public Schools staff, are saddened and outraged by recent events that demonstrate the prejudice and injustice that persist in our country. Whereas racism and hate have no place in our schools or our society, we must protect the constitutional rights of every person who lives, works, and learns in our community. Then it goes on to have some other declarations, which you can find on our website or read if you're on the meeting now. And it concludes with, therefore, be it resolved that we, members of the School Board of the City of Manassas, stand steadfast in our commitment to foster an inclusive educational environment where every student, teacher, support professional, parent, and community member is treated with dignity and respect, as well as our commitment to continue fighting for racial justice and human and civil rights for all. And I urge you all who may be looking at this to read the entire affirmation and also the proclamation, because the words are very relevant and very important. We just didn't want to read the entire things to you tonight. But I thank the board again for supporting this as well. So after those proclamations and affirmations, the next item on the agenda is another spotlight. And I think I may be turning it over to Dr. Newman or Mrs. Radford, I'm not sure.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
were those resolutions that the board needs to vote on? Or would anybody like to? Because I certainly think that's something I'd like to be on the record of supporting.
Okay. We talked about, I thought about it. So if it's something the board wants to vote on, we definitely can do that. Let's see. Would you like to vote on both of them? Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do that then. Let's, if you don't mind, before we get to the spotlight, let's go to the LGBTQ Pride Proclamation. May I have a motion on that, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd move that the School Board of the City of Manassas endorse the LGBTQ proclamation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Albrecht, second by Mr. Demaria, that the School Board of the City of Manassas endorse the LGBTQ Pride Proclamation. Is there any discussion? Ms. Garza, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chairman Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Kiefer, Mr. Demaria,
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht,
Aye.
Mrs. Seberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Garza. The ayes have it 7-0. The proclamation is endorsed by the school board. The second item is the affirmation condemning racism. May I have a motion on that, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the School Board of the City of Manassas endorse the affirmation condemning racism.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Albrecht, second by Mrs. Seberg, that the school board of the city of Manassas endorse the affirmation condemning racism. Mrs. Any discussion? Seeing none. Mrs. Garza, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Chairman Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Kiefer,
Aye.
Mr. Demaria,
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht,
Aye.
Mrs. Seberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Did we lose you, Sanford?
It has a little yellow arrow sign on his name.
I hate it when we lose Sanford.
He's. Yeah, I think he has a connection issue.
It says his video is not available. It doesn't say anything about his audio.
Ms. Garza's calling to check on it.
Back. I am on my wife's computer and it's down on me. So Anyhow, I have my phone. I heard everything. Aye. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, we move on to the next. Newman.
Chairman
Is
Williams.
everyone hearing Sanford?
Could you hear me? Could y'all hear me?
Not very well, Sanford.
Okay. Um, I will turn it over to Dr. Newman, and I'm going to run over to my other computer while I start the spotlight.
Chairman Williams, we have a special presentation tonight. This is a bittersweet moment for me, as well as for our school division. Tonight is the last night that Dr. Stone will be an official member of the family for a school board meeting. I still have her for one more task force meeting on Thursday, and then we have our last cabinet meeting on Monday before she officially joins the Arizona family. Before I turn it over to Ms. Radford, I just want to speak to Dr. Stone directly. And, 2 years ago, I joined this family and you welcomed me during very difficult times for both of us. And I appreciate your professionalism. I appreciate the fact that we were able to sit down and talk and get to know each other as people as well as educators. I know you're going to do extremely well. You're ready for this. I remember the first conversation we had when we discussed your future and what you wanted to do. And I don't know why you were nervous because you're born for this, you're made for this. It happened at the right time. You get to be close to your mother, which I know is very important to you. We're going to miss you, and I'm happy for you as an individual. The legacy that you've left here at Manassas City is one that you should be proud of. From being, the principal at Hayden, and then you'll move up the ladder to the leadership position at the central office. It's going to be very difficult to replace you. So I just want to let you know personally, directly from me, how much you have meant to me during my 2 years here, and can't wait to follow your career in the superintendency. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Radford.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Good evening to all of our board members and others that may be viewing with us on tonight. It's been a minute since I've been with you to do a spotlight. And as Dr. Newman mentioned, this is a bittersweet one, not one that I was looking forward to doing, but Dr. Stone, as he stated, you are going to be missed. And while we cannot be together corporately to share love with you, I was able to collect a few sentiments from some of our peers that wanted to share some well wishes for you tonight. So if you'll just allow us a couple of minutes to share this brief presentation, we'll go ahead and flow with that now. Ms. Garza. I don't think we have the sound yet.
To lead to a successful super. Dr. Stone, I just want to say it was a pleasure getting to know you the past 2 years. Your passion for the success of all of our students was evident in your work. And I know that's going to lead to a successful superintendency in Arizona. They are so blessed and fortunate to have you leading their school division. We will miss you here in Manassas City, but we know you're going to do big things in Arizona.
Well, Dr. Sanford Williams here. I want to congratulate you on your position. I have no doubt you do a phenomenal job. You're getting an incredible, dedicated, intelligent, hardworking, passionate person who will always put her children first. Thank you for all you've done for Manassas City Public Schools. I will miss you around Manassas City. And if you have anything to help you, please let me know. Take care and good luck.
Hey, Becky. Just wanted to take a second and say thank you for all that you have given to Manassas City and its staff and its students over the years. We've been working together a long time. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do without you just down the hall. From lots of years as principal colleagues to now our positions in central office. And I just want you to know I've appreciated our relationship and our dialogue, and Arizona is lucky to get you. I know you will continue to do great things there. All the best.
Hi, Dr. Stone. Congratulations on your move to Arizona, where you're going to serve students as a superintendent. You've always been a fierce advocate for those kids who need a strong voice in their corner. And I know that your new district is getting a leader who's going to put kids first. I wanted to say thank you for your support and steadfast encouragement of me as I grew as a leader. I'll miss you, Becky. Godspeed on your journey west.
Hi, Becky. Congratulations on your new position in Arizona. I'm sure you're going to do great. I know you're going to do great. We're going to miss you here. I want to thank you for everything you've done for mostly our children, for our school board, for making us look good, by giving us information and being intelligent, physically looking good, besides all brain. You can't look good. So, but I also want to thank you for putting up with me, putting up with my jokes, giving me ammunition for my jokes. Your height, your marketing abilities, some other things, for listening to my arguments, putting up with my arguments, mostly putting up with them. I don't think that very much. But mostly I want to thank you for what you've done for our kids and for being my friend.
Hey, Becky, it's Carrie. I'm not good at the video thing. I'm not good at the goodbye thing. So I just want to thank you for all of the time that we had to work together. Thank you for what you've done for Manassas City Public Schools and our students here. We are going to miss you, but we know that you're going to be doing wonderful things in Arizona. Come visit us anytime. And if Renee and I show up at your door knocking on some road trip, just go ahead and open it, okay? Bye. Take care. Hi, Dr. Stone. I wanted to wish you farewell and good luck. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with someone who's so very committed to our students. Thank you for your compassionate leadership. Warmest congratulations and best wishes for a Senate future.
Hey there, Dr. Stone. Just want to thank you for all that you've done for Manassas City Public Schools. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me personally and professionally. It's an honor and privilege to work with you these almost 6 years that I've been here with the school system. And I just wish you the best in your future endeavors out in Arizona. And just take care of the family. Please stay in touch.
Hi, Becky. It's Kiris. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your help and support over the last 2 years, my first 2 years as a principal. I'll just need your personal contact information so that I can ask you additional questions over the next several years. Congratulations on your new job. The school district is very lucky to have you, and I know that you will do a fabulous job. Bye. Keep in touch.
Hey, Dr. Stone. Just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for Manassas City Public Schools, Osborne High School, and for me personally. I appreciate all your advice and help. I navigated my first year. I learned so much. I can't ever thank you enough for your support. So I wish you all the best in Arizona. I know you do great things. Please come back and visit or stay in touch. We're going to miss you and thank you. I'm forever in your debt. Take care.
Hi, Becky. It was great to work with you. Yes, you have a little Starbucks cup here because I don't think I ever saw you without a Starbucks cup. Wish you the best of luck in Arizona. Call me if you
need an HR consultant to talk to. Bye-bye.
Hi, Becky. Just wanted to take a moment to congratulate you on your new position. You're going to make an amazing superintendent. I really admire and respect you and appreciate the confidence you've given me as a leader and the mentorship you've given me. It never seemed like it was a bother to you when I had random questions or whatever it may be. It really helped me along in a major way, and I'll never forget that. You're such a strong advocate for students. It's your passion for students is just beyond compare. And I just think the world of you. I hope to keep in touch, and best of luck in your new position.
Dr. Stone, Becky, I just want to say congratulations to you on this new opportunity that you have out there in sunny Arizona. I know this is something that you have desired, so I'm very happy for you. Please don't forget about us here in Manassas City Public Schools. We'll miss seeing you. But congratulations again and good luck to you.
So as you can see, we had a collection of principals, your peers that from the director, from the directors in the cabinet, those that report to you. We just wanted to have a quick opportunity to just say thank you. I know it's kind of hard to hear all the words that everybody had to say as we share it over this medium, but we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. I'll send that to you so that you have it and you can really listen to the things that people said about you. Unfortunately, we did have something else that we wanted to present to you, a little bit more tangible, and we sent it out there to Arizona, and apparently it has not arrived yet, but you can be on the lookout for that. I believe Ms. Garza actually may have a picture of what it is. It's kind of one of those IOUs. But there you go. If you were here with us physically, we would certainly present this to you on the air during our live meeting. But because of the conditions we're in, we couldn't do that. But we hope that when you receive it, you will understand the sentiment behind it, that we are very proud of you. We appreciate all the work that you've done in Manassas City Schools. I personally have had the opportunity to work with you for a long time and on many different projects and situations that we've had in the school system. So I just want to thank you for all that you've done, and I want to wish you well as you continue on your way to Arizona. Thank you, Dr. Stone.
And I just want to say thank you to everyone. It's been 13 years that I have loved every minute of. I have a great team and great support, but serving the kids was the most important. So thank you for that opportunity.
And thank you. None of us like goodbyes, so we'll just say see you later. We know that Manassas is kind of like home for you now, so we anticipate you coming back from time to time. Oh, look. She will be our deliverer when your package arrives. Thank you, Dr. Newman and Mr. Williams.
Thank you. And we're going to talk about it some more, in our comments. But I wanted to ask Dr. Stone, would you like to make any more comments now, or just wait till we talk about you, Mr. Mary embarrasses you later?
More comments now. Dr. Brent, you're on here. What I'm going to say is Mr. DeMaria wants as many fire drills as you could possibly get in a year. So always make sure that that's happening.
We'll have to have a talk about that, sir.
But honestly, I do want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me the opportunity to serve Manassas City Schools. I sincerely enjoyed the community, the kids, the team we have. It's just been awesome.
Thank you. And we're going to miss you, as we said, but we'll talk about you more in our comments. All right, moving on to the agenda. The next item is the consent agenda. May I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
Sure. Chair, I motion that the school board of the city of Manassas approve the revised agenda that was presented.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Williams, second by Mrs. Stevens, that the school board of the city of Manassas approve the consent agenda as revised as presented. Any discussion? Mrs. Garza, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Chairman Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Kiefer,
Aye.
Mr. DeMaria,
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht,
Aye.
Mrs. Seberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Garza. The ayes have it 7-0, and the consent agenda as revised as presented is approved 7-0. Next on the discussion agenda is policies, and I believe Mrs. Keeper is up next to discuss some of our policies.
Yes. Can you all hear me? Being connected has been a challenge for me today, so I apologize. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and the board and the staff. I just, again, as I always do at the policy committee, have to thank the staff who kind of pulled everything together for us, particularly Mrs. Garza, who keeps us on track every time there's an update. We did discuss and approve some updates to policies in the consent agenda tonight. Since that time, thanks to the committee, including Mrs. Stevens, Mrs. Seberg, as well as the staff, we've reviewed an additional 41 policies from the 50 we did just, I think, the last board meeting. And what you see up here on the screen right now, essentially here's kind of the synopsis of what's been updated. Among the 41 policies, really 8 were reviewed but not revised. And again, these are all looking at what our Virginia School Board Association recommends in terms of policies and procedures for the Commonwealth. We tend to follow theirs unless there's a modification needed for Manassas City Public Schools purposes. Again, 8 were reviewed but not revised. The remaining were really updates, as the board is familiar with Virginia Code, legal or cross-reference updates, but no substantive updates. As far as the ones that remain modified from the VSBA, they're really about things that keep us a little bit of flexibility in terms of what works best for Manassas City Public Schools. And 3 of them were really just alluding to the fact that our superintendent needs to develop procedures around how we conduct business, in particular for us, around expulsions, safety drills, and food services. Again, those are just all within the bounds of how we've operated, and we wanted to maintain that flexibility. So with that said, Mr. Chair, I open up the floor for any questions or conversation.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Kiefer. We appreciate it, and as always, we appreciate the work that you and the committee do on our policies, because we know it can be thankless work, to be honest with you, sometimes, but it's necessary, and we appreciate it. Are there any comments from anyone? Any discussion? I am not seeing anyone or hearing anyone. So if there are no comments or discussions, Ms. Keeper, the next steps again?
So we would like to put this on the consent agenda, I believe, Ms. Garza, for the next school board special meeting?
That is correct.
Okay. Great, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it again. And thanks for hopping in when you could be with your family. So we'll try to get through this pretty quickly. We appreciate it. All right, the next item on the agenda, Student Achievement Task Force Reopening Update. Dr. Melissa Saunders, you have the floor.
Hi there. Good evening, Chairman Williams, Vice Chairwoman Kiefer, and members of the board, Dr. Newman. A shout out to my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Stone. She will be missed. And I thank her. I've spent all of those 13 years with her. And so we will definitely miss each other, but we will see each other soon. So thank you for your continued commitment to students and teaching me that it's all from the heart. So I just start off with that. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the task force progress. I was with you a couple of weeks ago to talk about the initial setup of the task force. And so tonight I'm just going to share where we are. I have to say that there is a lot of work going on in many, many Zoom sessions, in lots of conversations. lots of teachers, lots of support staff members, lots of principals and directors, and people all across the division are working and talking very, very hard and trying to keep up with what the latest guidance will be, what the latest information that's out there, and how do we best serve our community. And so while I may be the voice speaking tonight, there are a tremendous number of people that are doing great work behind the scenes that you maybe don't see here tonight, and I need to give them credit for that work as well. It's just easier in a Zoom kind of, or in this environment for one person to speak. So Alba, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this next slide, I seem to be presenting right after the governor also does an announcement. And so this is actually a little bit outdated. Today, as you know, the governor shared some information about the phase 3 guidance, but this just actually outlines the governor's phase reopening of Virginia schools. These are specific things to Virginia schools and things that we are, really is the foundation of the work that we are considering. It's important to know at the moment that we are in phase 2. And the items that we are considering in phase 2 don't necessarily change considerably in phase 3, but there are some differences between phase 2 and phase 3. And if you listen to the press conference, I understand that around the July 1st date, we may be moving into the phase 3. So some things to point out here on this slide would be that gatherings are limited under phase 2 to 50 or other social distancing measures are in place. Still maintaining the 6-foot separation to the greatest extent possible, the 6-foot social distancing on buses, the health screenings and temperature checks are conducted daily. Face coverings should be worn by staff in times where they're at least 6 feet physical distance, 6 feet or physical distancing cannot be maintained. So these are some of the conversations that our task forces are having, and this is essentially the guiding document that we have been using. Next slide, Alba. This slide is just sharing with you the framework for the task force. If you remember my previous presentation, there are critical action areas. We have 4 of them in our division that we are working on, and each of those task force areas are considering 3 options for return to school. Option 1 is to reopen school for full in-person learning with minimal adjustments. You'll notice under option 1, we have added with a parent selected 100% distance learning option. You'll see that in option 2 as well. Option 2 is to reopen school with some sort of a hybrid combination of in-person and distance learning. This is the one you're hearing most about, I'm sure, lots of other divisions talking about as well. Anywhere between a 25% return option, a 50% return option, and again, including the option for parents to select 100% virtual option or distance learning option. And then our third option to consider is reopening school with full distance learning for all students. The task force has been asked to consider each of these options and to develop plans accordingly. Next slide, please. This slide highlights our 4 task force critical actions in 4 key areas. The first being technology, having student device and access. The second around the instructional aspect, both the instructional academic aspect as well as the social emotional support for students to learn in any environment and to have that new learning in any environment, be it in school or at home or some other option. The third item is around our operations. This is some of the hard work that is currently going on around resources, equipments, procedures, learning spaces. All of those details are within this task force item. And then the final one is around our human resources, our policies, procedures, and supporting our staff and their mental, social, and emotional needs of all employees. Next slide, Alba. This slide just gives an overview of our task force structure, as I've talked about in previous updates. We do have our executive leadership team that includes all of the executive directors and the task force leadership group, as well as Dr. Newman joins those. We meet every week and receive information from our critical action working groups and from our input and feedback teams. The critical action working groups are made up of staff across the division, and our input and feedback teams are made up of those staff, both instructional staff, licensed, and support staff members. Each of those critical action teams has a group of input and feedback team members that have been engaged. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are just going to give you a bit of an update as to where we are with each of those critical actions. The first area is Bobby Barrett, is Mr. Barrett's area of technology. And again, his team is working very hard in this area. You'll notice that there's sort of a status bar at the top of each one of these slides. This is how we keep track of our work in our task force meetings. And Bobby's team is on track and doing everything that they need to do. A couple of areas that we would highlight, some progress updates. We are transitioning to a one-to-one device model pre-K through 12. You heard Mr. Barrett speak about that. We are doing the work that needs to get done to make that happen for the opening of school. And we are planning for access options for all students pre-K through 12. Some upcoming milestones. There is a household access survey that is going out to every one of our families. And really the purpose of that survey is to determine what type of internet access families do have by household. We know that we have lots of multiple children in one house. And so when we are providing opportunities or providing access to families, we know that we only need to provide one per household. So we do need to get some household information to help us with the planning. And Mr. Barrett and his team are helping the instructional side address instructional software needs, things that will address the student needs as we identify those. So they're working together hand in hand to ensure that it meets all the technology needs and meets our instructional needs. The input and feedback team engagement. So each of these critical action teams have a group of 18 to 30 staff members from across every building and across the entire division. And all of our action teams have engaged their input and feedback teams in lots of different ways. Mr. Barrett has done some email communications, some Zoom meetings, and asked them to do document review and feedback, and that process will continue. Next slide, please. The second action, critical action, is around the instruction. Dr. Cramp is leading that and doing a great job working with that at this point. Also on track, our progress update. This team is really developing 25% capacity models, 50% instructional models, and then 100% virtual model. They have sample schedules. They have these principals are really working hard to figure out how do you operationalize all of that, all of those options. So they are in a good place with all of those variety of options. They are also spending time on planning the professional development. My dog enjoys this as well. I'm gonna let him out. Yeah. Some upcoming milestones for this group. They are doing a lot of work around the instructional pacing review. As we talked about in the board retreat, our instructional pacing guides are going to need to be adjusted. And we're really focusing on what we would call power standards, really those important, the most important standards that students need to have. They will also spend some time evaluating parent survey data around how are their kids doing as they are entering back into a return to school model. What kind of concerns might they have? They are also engaged their input and feedback team several times through many meetings, presentations, and email. Next slide, please. Critical Action 3 is around the operations area, and Mr. Hawkins is leading this group. Again, on track, doing a lot of good work. Our progress update, we have submitted a phase 2 health mitigation plan that is required by VDOE in order to operate in some activities in phase 2 at Osborne High School specifically. For return to summer activities, whether that is athletics, band camp, a couple of other things. And so we have submitted that plan and been working hand in hand with the high school on that. They've also spent a lot of time on transportation capacity models and reviewing what does that look like with physical distancing? How can we do that? How do we group the kids? How do we do the bus stops? And so they are deep involved in the transportation piece. Upcoming milestones for this group, physical distance classroom modeling. They're getting some support with how does a classroom look when you have 6 feet physical distance in that. And mitigation supplies procurement. There's a lot that needs to happen between now and August 17th. And so I know that Mr. Hawkins and his team are working hard to identify those needs and get them ready to go. The input and feedback team, again, they are doing just as well through email, Zoom, and document review, and really engaging that team at multiple levels. Next slide, please. Final action is around the human resources side, and Ms. Wingfield is leading this team. The progress update for this group, as she's talked about, our staff readiness survey for return to school has been out there and will end in at the end of the week on Friday. Policy review and revisions are taking place. Upcoming milestones are assessing employee needs upon return, really using that survey to drive some of the items that we might offer or processes we might put in place. And then employee health and mitigation procedures, development and training. Certainly a large part of return to operations is making sure that our employees understand the expectations and the processes and procedures around that. They are as well connecting with their input and feedback team through Zoom meetings, email, and document review. Next slide, please. So a few high-level upcoming milestones for the whole group. As I said, our phase 2 health mitigation plan was submitted to VDOE today, or it actually was submitted today, but it has to be done by tomorrow. Our parent readiness survey for the school will launch on June 25th. Our staff readiness survey will close on June 26th. Our task force action plans will be complete on July 3rd. Our school board presentation will be July 14th. We will come to the school board for final approval of a plan on July 21st. We are required to submit a phase 3 health mitigation plan and an instructional plan to Virginia Department of Education. That has to be done 15 days, business days prior to the first day of school. So for us, this is July 27th. All identified tasks that we have identified through the action teams need to be complete by August 15th, and then August 17th, our 2021 school year begins. So this is a very tight timeline of work that is happening across the division, and we look forward to coming back to the board and sharing some of our ideas under each of those options. And that concludes my presentation.
Chairman Williams, before the board asks questions, may I make one comment?
Yes, please. Go ahead, sir.
I want to get it out there on record for the submission of the phase 2 piece. That does not mean that we are going to have sports practicing or band camp tomorrow. I will be meeting with Mr. Pflugraff, Mr. DeGrood, the coaches. I know our band director will also be there tomorrow morning. Before any activity will start, they will need to present a individual plan for each individual sport and each individual activity. Our students will need to have physicals. And we will not, and let me repeat this, we will not have any of our student athletes or band members participating until we feel it is safe. The submission of the plan was just one step of moving in a direction of having those activities, as the Virginia High School League put out their report. I believe it's now been 2 weeks that they were going to start allowing out of season conditioning. And I know that we received some questions about that, about when were we going to be able to start. we will not start until it is absolutely safe. I was talking to Mr. Flugraff and Mr. DeGroot this morning. You have the University of Clemson, the University of Texas, 23 and 30 athletes testing positive because they've opened up off-season conditioning, and that is not a direction that I want to go in. So we will not, again, I just wanted to let that be known, we will not start these activities until it is safe to do so.
All right, thank you for that comment. And you can throw the University of Houston there as well as one of those institutions that had issues with athletes getting COVID after being grouped together for spring practice. But I know I'm pretty confident some board members have comments or questions, so I'll open up the floor for discussion. Mrs. Kiefer, I saw your hand first, so please go forth.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, first of all, start by saying thank you to Dr. Newman, Dr. Saunders, to everybody on this call, and to the task force folks. As a person who's leading a reentry into an organization that's nowhere near trying to solve how do we get kids educated, how many people are affected by this, I have to say it's really easy to have people sit on the sidelines and pick it apart because everyone knows best. And I just want to say that I am fully behind you, as I know this board is, on the caution with which you are making these decisions and recommendations moving forward. The logistics of something like this are something that nobody could possibly predict or understand, from spatial to ventilation to safety and security of our kids and our staff, to emergency protocols. God forbid we have to exit quickly again because another pandemic arises or there's kind of a continuation of this one. So everybody from our IT to our human resources to our finance to our academics and student supports and communications. I mean, it's an unbelievable effort that I don't think anyone can possibly understand the magnitude. And when it comes to our kids and the safety of our community, y'all are doing the right thing, and I know we'll continue to do so. So just know that I probably speak for the board, even though I'm not supposed to, in saying we fully support you. This is not easy. I do not envy the position any of you are in terms of the recommendations, but just know that we know we are in the best hands. So I just wanted to put that out there for the public to know and appreciate how much you all are doing to make sure that the end goal is the end goal and the important thing is the important thing. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Mrs. Kiefer. Other comments? Mr. Albrecht, please.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. Like Mrs. Kiefer, I've been part of a couple of both corporate and also participating with 2 or 3 different federal agencies on a plan to phase 3, how to get back to work. And it's kind of sobering. And to think that we're trying to apply this to kids is significant. You know, contact tracing is really key. So one federal agency is looking at having teams where team A would work Monday, team B Wednesdays, and team C Fridays. And there's some talk about team C wouldn't want to work Fridays. But the point is those teams would come in those 3 days and it would be about 10% at max of the available workforce. Trying to keep those social distance things. Halls would all be one way. Stairwells would be one way. There'd be mandatory temporal screening at the gates. And one agency is going to discourage the use of Metro and say, we have a parking lot, it's free parking. So all of that to say, if you think about that, at best, 15 to 30% of a workforce may be able to come back to work in a phase 2, phase 3 as people are currently planning it. And we're talking about all these kids. And I'm wondering what's our biggest, as we talk about phase 2 and phase 3, and Dr. Stone, you talked about it with social distancing rules. If an average classroom's 250 square feet, I have no idea what the right number is. That says we could probably put about 7 people in it, and the teacher counts as 1, and if there's an instructional assistant, that counts as 2. Is that our biggest limiter, or is it the school bus? Because I don't even know how many people could fit on a school bus with a 6-foot rule. It might even be not worth having a bus.
So, you know, I'm sure Mr. Hawkins would want to jump in as well, but I've been in enough calls that I think both of those are very large hurdles. The school bus issue is certainly the one that I would say rises to the top. We have kind of planned that no more than 10 in a room if we're at 25% capacity. That's what that would look like. So yeah, those are both, I think, equally as important. I don't know, Andy, if you wanted to also communicate.
No, I agree. That's some of the things that we've been struggling with for several weeks now, is trying to figure out how we're going to get the children to school on time or in a timely manner where quality instruction can be delivered. How are we going to get the health screenings that are required to be done and for the children to be able to get into the school? And once we get them there, what are the enhanced cleaning that's going to be done in the school? What are the custodians' role? Where are we going to feed these children? Are we going to feed them in the classroom or in the cafeteria? What's the best way to go about doing all of those things? And then guess what? It starts all over the next day, trying to get them to school, get the health screenings, get them in fed. And it's a consistent effort each time. They're all huge hurdles that we have to go through and that we're working through as we try to figure out what our new normal will be like when we come back in August, assuming that we're still in phase 3.
So just to follow on, and not looking for the answer right now, but if transportation is a significant constraint, we have bus zones or walk zones that significantly could be expanded and comply with the state code. Has been any discussion at the state level about that? And it's just something to explore.
Well, it's been a discussion at the local level, and we have our walk zones are pretty much expanded as all they can right now. I mean, some of our children could walk to school, but the reason why we don't allow them to walk to school is because they would have to cross a 4-lane highway or railroad track to get to school. It's more of a safety issue than anything else. So we've been looking at expanding our walk zones and seeing where we can do that. And we've been also working with our nurse manager and looking at the CDC requirements. I mean, for example, the bus situation has been mitigated in somewhat in that if someone actively has the COVID virus, you would need to be with that person for up to approximately 15 minutes before you would probably catch the disease. 98% of our buses run on children are on the bus less than 15 minutes of time. So that's a great thing. So if we can, I don't know, we'll have to talk with the DOE whether or not we can get a variance on that or not. But you know, if we're following the CDC guidelines, and if the students are wearing some sort of face covering, and can we load more children on the bus and get them there at an appropriate time? Do we have to stick to the 6-foot social distancing? Those, you know, that's just one of the issues that we've gone through, but in transportation. But we believe that if we can get those children on the bus and get them off at the school in less than 15 minutes for each run that the bus driver makes, and if the students are wearing a face covering, we can get past the transportation issue.
Mr. Albrecht, to your point of the walk zones, I have had preliminary conversations with our city manager. And at some point in the near future, we'll be sitting down with him and some of his staff to see what is safe as far as walk zones and what can be extended and what is not safe to extend. You know, sometimes the rules on a sheet of paper may say something is safe, but when you're actually going out and looking at it and making decisions, you realize that that's really not a good decision for kids. The information that Mr. Hawkins just shared, he didn't just come up with that out of the blue. That was actually in a document that was sent to us. So I don't want anybody thinking that we're making up anything as we're going along. That came out of a document. We're trying to follow CDC and Virginia Department of Health guidance, things from the governor, things from the DOE.
It's from the CDC. It's part of the CDC recommendations. So, well, we're trying to follow all the rules and guidelines that have been given to us by all of our health professionals.
Thanks. That's all I had.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Mary, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I see that we've got that our parents or kids can do 100% off-site if that's what they choose, if we decide to do something different. I think that's a wonderful thing. What about staff? What about staff that is, you know, like Mr. Albrecht in the older age group that is more susceptible to this? You know, we're going to have to be concerned about them as well. And just because they're talking, you know, K through 3, we might be able to go back sooner because they're, you know, less susceptible to this. Their teachers and their cafeteria workers and their principals and their custodians aren't K through 3, and some of them can be very susceptible. So I'm sure that you're looking into that, but we need to continue to look into that. And if they can't come back, if we've got a 65-year-old guy that has had a heart attack and is susceptible, can they do their work online while their kids are at school? It's just another thing that I've told most people this, that in my 14 years, you know, the budget's a pain in the butt, expulsions are horrible, and this is what's keeping me up at night, trying to decide what we're going to do here. I'm so thankful we have such a good staff looking into it, but it's not going to be easy no matter what. So those are a couple of things that I'm worried about. Again, you know, can they opt out? Phase 3, I'm looking on buses. Hopefully Andy is right and we can get some sort of waiver, but they still have the 6-foot distancing. We're gonna get 10 kids on a bus. And if we're into further phases, unless we get some other kind of waiver or able to figure out something else, there's no way we're going to be able to get those kids on the buses to bring in more than, you know, 25 or 33% at a time. I don't see how that happens without larger walk zones. And it is true, we have to be concerned with safety of our kids, but I'm very confident, and we've done it in the past and have been shot down, that we can safely increase our walk zone somewhat. And this may be a good idea to, since we are looking at it, even if we don't figure out something else out, we may want to go forward in 22 or 21, 22 and have our walk zones expanded anyway, because it's good for our kids to walk. Those are pretty much my points on this. We usually don't have a whole lot of people watching. I have a feeling, you know, because people are so concerned of what we're going to be doing, that people maybe are going to watch this on YouTube, and they're looking at, you know, we're going to make our next decision on I think it's July 21st. That's a long ways off, and it's less than a month away from when their kids are going to start school. So to our parents, I'd like to say we'd like to give you an answer right now. We can't. We don't know what's going to be happening then. We're doing our best. Staff just showed you how hard they're working at figuring all this out. If I weren't so old and I had my babies still in school right now, I would be prepared for them to be home for the most part, come August 17th or whatever our start date is. That's what I would prepare for. So when you're looking at what you should do, my opinion, one of 7 board members here, is that you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to take care of your children somehow while you're at work, or figure out a way to take more time off of work since you've already taken 6 months off or whatever it is. But I would be very concerned that we're not going to be at school full time come on the 17th of August and be prepared for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demarier. Any other comments? Question? I'm looking. Ms. Stevens?
As we're talking about the school bus situation and social distancing on the school bus, I keep thinking back to the last meeting we had in person, where Andy did a presentation on the number of cars that are not stopping for stop school buses, and how the number of cars that are not stopping has gone up exponentially. When we start talking about increasing those walk zones, the first thing that comes to my mind is if people aren't stopping for stopped school buses, are they going to stop for kids who are in the crosswalk? So those are some of the things we really have to think about. And I really appreciate the team, the task force that's come together to work on this, because every time you think you've figured something out, something else comes along that you think, uh-oh, we have to work on this. So, we talk about, well, we'll increase walk zones. Okay, well, what do we do about traffic? So I really appreciate the work that everyone's doing, and that for parents, I'm a parent, I know this is a very stressful time. We don't know what's going to happen, and that not knowing is very difficult. Stores are already starting to put school supplies out. But every decision we're making is for the best for our students and our staff. And that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing, our students and our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Good points. Any other comments? Ms. Williams?
Can I address Ms. Stevens?
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Newman.
I want you to know that we're just looking at that as an option too. We're not telling anyone that we're expanding the walk zones, but we are looking at all options on how to get our kids to school safely. And when we open up, getting as many there as possible to educate, because we all know that the quality of the education will increase when they're in our buildings. I also think it's very important that when these surveys are going out, that we can get as close to 100% participation from our parents and guardians, because we're going to take that survey data and it's going to drive some of the decisions that we're making. And yes, parents are going to get a lot of surveys in a short amount of time, but we hope that they will complete them so we can get a complete picture of what we're facing. If you look at transportation, just throwing this out as an example, if we get 20% of our families that say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable sending my kid to school, so I want to take this full virtual option, then we know we can take those individuals out of the transportation picture as we're trying to develop the plan. So that's just one example of why these surveys that are going to be coming out are so important.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. I appreciate that. And I know how hard the task force is working, and I know how many hours you're putting in and everyone is putting in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens and Dr. Newman. Mrs. Williams, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I just want to, again, thank the task force for putting all the work into building this foundation for reopening. I suspect we are just going to have there will be a hybrid approach as we open and as we probably continue throughout the entire, school year. And I think we as parents, students, and the community as a whole, really, we're going to have to put some more thought and more effort into how this is really going to work. And it will be interesting to see what the survey says. And I would, anybody who watches this, please, like Dr. Newman said, we need everybody's input. I've seen the results from the Virginia PTA survey, and people are definitely all over the place. So this approach will have to be a hybrid approach, and it's not going to be easy. But I want to thank everybody for their hard work, because it's a lot. all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. And Mrs. Seberg, did you have anything to add?
I'll just say that I'm waiting to hear what comes out of the task force so I can support you. I know that you guys will make the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we leave this topic, thanks again for all the hard work. I know it's not easy. As Mr. Albrecht and Ms. Keeper mentioned, I'm involved intimately with reopening, moving back in for adults in a couple spheres, and that's difficult. But I want to bring up another issue, more personal issue. My wife is a pediatrician here, and she's seen some cases, and even more so, my son and daughter-in-law, both physicians, some of you may know, in New York City, and they were on the front line, so to speak. And hearing him describe the angst of dealing with so many COVID patients in New York City, first as a pediatrician with kids, and then having a whole floor full of adult COVID patients and seeing the ramifications on them, and then later having him describe something called MIS-C, M-I-S-C, which is multi-inflammatory syndrome, which is affecting children. And they've seen it more in New York City. My son saw it first, which is kind of interesting because he saw it first in New York. My wife is starting to hear about it and see it in Northern Virginia. And basically, those are kids who had COVID. Many were asymptomatic, were fine, but later on their immune systems are kind of rebelling, and they have other ramifications. And it's too soon to tell longitudinally what those ramifications will be. But suffice it to say, there's so many things about this disease we don't know. So because it's so insidious and can be so harmful, we can't just assume that, oh, it's okay for kids to get it and not for adults, and vice versa. So we need to be very careful and critical and listen to the experts because they're learning a lot as they go along. So I applaud our staff, the task force, for putting our kids first, because at the end of the day, we want our kids alive and we want our staff alive. You can't guarantee anything, but we need to do what's best for kids and do what's safest for kids. And because this is actually a dangerous disease for some people, we want to be as careful as possible. So I applaud you for doing that. And we're going to, like Mrs. Seberg said, which is what the task force says, but I want us to lose sight of the fact that this isn't some abstract thing we're talking about. These are real diseases with real ramifications that we don't even know, or the doctors don't know fully, going forward. So we need to be careful as we go forward. And I know we will be. And I'm glad to hear everyone's on the same page that we're putting our kids and our families and our staff, which is very important as well, putting their health first because it's very important. So I will end there and move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Dr. Saunders, for the great presentation. Next item on the agenda is the action agenda. And we have new business student reps for the 2020-2021 school year. And I don't know if Mrs. Williams would like to make a comment about that before I ask for a motion.
No, I don't need to make a comment.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, in that case, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the school board of the city of Manassas approve the student representative for the 2020-2021 school year as recommended.
Second.
Thanks. And I think we should read the names of the maker of the motion and read the names of the representatives since she doesn't mind. Ms. Williams, if you don't mind.
I'm going by what's on the paper. All right, then.
Okay. Ms. Leoba Tonoli and Tanya Osorio Flores.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, got you. So, a motion by Mrs. Williams, second by Mrs. Seberg, that the school board of the city of Manassas approve Leoba Tonoli and Tanya Osorio Flores as the student representatives for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there any discussion?
Before we go, I just want to thank Robin and Suzanne for all the work they did on this. This isn't easy either. Having to interview these kids and having a lot of good candidates makes it very difficult on them. And so I appreciate what they've done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Marion. And for my discussion piece, I'll add a thank you. I know this is time consuming, different circumstances, but we were able to pull it off. So thank you all for your time and your energy, because this is a very important position for them and for us. They give great input to the board and help us as we do our work. So thank you. All right, with that, the motion's on the floor. Motion by Mrs. Williams, second by Mrs. Seberg for approval of the two student representatives. Mrs. Garza, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Chairman Williams?
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Kiefer?
Aye.
Second Marriott?
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht?
Aye.
Mrs. Seberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Mrs. Williams,
Aye.
Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garza. The ayes have it 7-0, and we have 2 new student representatives for the 2020-2021 school year. Congratulations to both of them. And I look forward to working with them. Hopefully they're watching this at some point. We can't wait to see them. All right, moving on. The final item on the agenda before board member comments is Superintendent's Contract Addendum, and it says me here, so I guess I'll read this. I am requesting authorization from the school board to add an addendum to the superintendent's contract, Dr. Newman's contract, for the purpose of increasing his annual salary by 2.6%. So may I have a motion, please?
Sir, I move that the school board of the city of Manassas approve the superintendent's annual evaluation and amendment to the superintendent's contract of employment, and that the chairman be authorized to enter into such amendment on behalf of the school board.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Maria, second by Mrs. Kiefer, that the school board of the city of Manassas approve the superintendent's annual evaluation and amendment to the superintendent's contract of employment, that the chairman be authorized to enter into such agreement on behalf of the school board. Is there any discussion?
Just to clarify for the record, all other terms and conditions of the superintendent's contract remaining the same. Is that correct?
I believe there was one change with regard to the 6 months versus 12 months in the salary.
Okay. Really, I was really getting at the term, which I want to be on the record public for that.
And the term is 4 years. Is there any other discussion? Mr. America?
Yes, sir. The salary was not in the motion. Is that okay?
Part of the amendment of the contract, so I think that's.
Oh, right. Yes.
To be fine.
You're right.
Yes.
Yeah. We're approving the amendment on behalf. Okay.
Good point there. Any other discussion? There are no other discussion. The motion on the floor from Mr. Demaria, second by Mrs. Kiefer. Mrs. Garza, may I have a roll call vote, please, for the superintendent's contract addendum vote?
Yes. Chairman Williams. Vice Chairwoman Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Demaria.
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht.
Aye.
Mrs. Seaver.
Aye.
Mrs. Williams.
Aye.
And Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ayes have it 7-0. The motion is passed. Thank you all very much, and thank you, Dr. Newman. We look forward to working with you going forward. Final item on the agenda is board member comments, and I printed out this sheet, so I'm just going to go with what it says. And Mr. Albrecht, you get to go first.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Stone, it's been fantastic. Very well for you. It's getting ready to start the start of a new academic year for the rest of us. It's going to be an interesting academic year, guys, and we talked about it in our work session before this. We've talked about it in the meeting, but certainly it's a challenge I know this board, our superintendent, our staff are prepared to deal with. Some board members said this as they made other comments, but first and foremost, I think this board, or at least I personally, care about the welfare of our students, our faculty, our staff. And if we take care of everybody physically, then hopefully we can all contribute to their academic progress going forward. But it's going to take a partnership between the schools, parents, and the students. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Albrecht. Mrs. Stevens.
I just wanted to say to Dr. Stone, I knew you when you were my son's principal. And I got to see firsthand and experience firsthand how you are such a strong advocate for all our students. And you are one who is able to stay calm in even the most stressful of situations. I think you're going to do a great job in Arizona. We're going to miss you here. Enjoy, have fun, and let us know how you're doing. Lots of pictures, lots of things coming back to us. And then thank you to everyone for all the work you're doing. These are unprecedented times. We don't have a plan book of previous experiences to go by to know what to do for the fall. But I know, just like Scott Albrecht said, everything this team does, the board does, the task force does, is for our students and for our families. And I think whatever decision is made, it will be the best decision for everyone involved. So thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens. Next, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I probably should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the student representatives, but I'm hoping Ms. Osorio Flores and Ms. Tonali are going to watch this at some point. But I'm so excited that they're going to be a part of the board. And yet again, there were many well-qualified applicants. Mrs. Seberg, Dr. Newman, and Mrs. Radford and I interviewed them. However, we can only choose two. I do feel like it's important as people watch this that they do know that the remaining of the applicants will have the pleasure of serving on the superintendent's student leadership committee, which is an honor. And now to Dr. Stone. You have been here for 13 years. I have a rising senior and a rising junior, so I've known you since then. And I feel like teachers at the elementary school level really do start to shape the minds and the people, the bodies and the souls of our students. And I believe you are a part of that. And I want to thank you for everything you've done, and good luck, and I wish you nothing but the best. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Appreciate that. Mrs. Seberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For my fellow school board members, I wanted to announce that the VSBA Northeast Region meeting, which was postponed in May, has now been rescheduled for Tuesday, July 28th at 3 p.m. online, of course, and a meeting announcement agenda will be forthcoming. Dr. Stone, farewell. I wish you the best. And I knew you long before I was on the school board. I can't remember if it was when I had a student at Hayden or if it was one of the various committees that we served on together, but I've always enjoyed working with you, and I appreciate your patience and your understanding and explaining things to me. Regarding our student representatives, I wanted to thank Mrs. Williams for leading the efforts in the interview and selection process this year. It's exciting to see the strength and experience of these students when we're interviewing them. So I'm looking forward to great things. Congratulations to Ms. Tonali and Ms. Osorio Flores. I look forward to your leadership and participation in this coming school year. And with tonight's LGBTQ proclamation, with our affirmation condemning racism, I'm most proud of these things. When we remember that the first Pride events were not parades, but protests, they were often led by Black LGBT leaders. The work of solidarity is an important legacy within LGBTQ communities and cultures. The most important statement that I'm proud of is that we stand steadfast in our commitment to foster an inclusive educational environment where every student, teacher, support professional, parent, and community leader is treated with dignity and respect, as well as our commitment to continue fighting for racial justice and human and civil rights for all. And that we urge our citizens and community members to recognize the value and the contributions made by LGBTQ staff and students and actively promote the principles of equality and liberty. That's if you missed the first 5 minutes of our meeting tonight. So now you got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Nicely put, Mrs. Seberg. Thank you. Next, Ms. Kiefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, thank the team who's been with us quite a long time this evening for all of the good education and that you've given to us to, as Tim would say, make us look smarter. and wiser, but also to thank you for the time that you are taking away from your families this evening to make sure that we're having the right conversations and doing the right thing. I'm going to actually spend my comments on Dr. Stone. So I didn't do a video because I can't look or sound as good as the people that were on the video, except for Mr. Demiria. I could have done better than that. But I'm glad with all my connection issues tonight. Oh no, she just went out. I'm like, at least she's on screen. I could see her cry, hopefully. Becky, I just want to tell you, you have been an unbelievable champion, a spokesperson, a representative of this division that everyone should strive to be. You often have to be a messenger of the unpopular decisions in community. You took it in stride, you did it with a smile, and you never lost a beat. I know when I had personal things to talk to you about as it relates to my children, you were the first person I'd run to for sound advice, for the best advice. And just more than anything, I mean, we've been able to have some real conversations, which I think this country needs to be able to do more of in hard times, is to have real conversations, no matter how difficult they are. I will always look to you. Arizona is lucky to have you. Manassas is sad to see you go, but you're never going to be any more than a phone call away for all of us. Wish you and your husband and everybody the best. You deserve the best because Arizona's got the best. We're so proud of you. We'll always stand behind you. Oh, I raise my glass to you when we can get together somewhere, sometime. I owe you some wine to thank you for all that you have done and for the person that you are. And Dr. Brent, I'm just going to offer one bit of advice as you get going. Never listen to Mr. Demiria, no matter what he says. We got you, whatever you need. But you've got Dr. Stone, I know, teaching you the way, and we're very lucky to have you as well. So Becky, man, we raise our glass to you. We thank you, we adore you, and we wish you only the best. And Dr. Brent, welcome to the family. Thank you.
Well put, Mrs. Kiefer. And I guess Mr. Demiria didn't see me in the chat box asking to go last. So you're going last. So I'm going to go next and you go after me. So anyhow, Dr. Stone, I won't keep this too long, but one thing I used to do when I first joined the board was try to visit with all the principals around town, just because I thought as a board member, that's one of the things I should do. And I try to do that when I can, not recently, obviously. But one conversation I recall very vividly was I was talking to you about one of the students. I don't know which grade they were in, but you were basically telling me you went to their baseball games. And I was like, well, it's not your child. Why are you going to their games? And you basically said that all the kids were your kids. And that impressed me so much because people often say that, but they don't often do that. But you live what you preached. So I appreciate your dedication, your time, your energy, and the love and concern you have for our children, because every child whose lives you affected, when you multiply that, you affected many more lives than that. So you should be proud of the legacy you've left, proud of the people you've touched, and proud of what you've done here. We're going to miss you very much. Family is more important than anything else on this earth. So I'm glad you're with your family. That's why you're there. And we know they're going to be glad to have you there. So we wish you Godspeed. We wish you well. And if you need anything that we can help you with, please don't hesitate to let us know. But thank you for your time, your service, and your love for our children that can't be matched. And with that, I will let Mr. Demiria close it out.
Thank you, sir. I don't know why the hell I got to go last, but I'm not starting with you, Becky. I'm not. Calm down. Kiefer, you're right. I don't know if we lost Dr. Brent or not, but he probably knew I was coming on. So I need to thank you, though, for being where you are and making this work for us. If everybody doesn't realize, Kristen's on vacation, and so that's why she's having such a hard time with this, and your dedication shows through. Thank you for that. Scott, thank you for being the leader you are and knowing that we should have voted on the affirmation and the proclamation. They are incredibly important things. This is a very inclusive, loving board, and we should do those sort of things. Make sure that it's that everybody that knows all 7 of us believe every word that we're in those things. So thank you for that, sir. Dr. Newman, in your in our earlier meeting, you talked to your staff about you know, how much you appreciated what they did for your evaluation, because you believe your evaluation is their evaluation, and we believe that your evaluation is our evaluation as well. And so staff, you need to know that if which we obviously didn't, but if Dr. Newman would have gotten a poor evaluation, that would have been on staff, him and his staff and us. But he got a great evaluation because of you all. And so take pride in that. He's doing a great job, and he couldn't do a great job without his staff. So we appreciate you very much for everything you've done, and especially what you're doing now, because this is such a difficult time. Dr. Stone, I already did the thing, you know, and I was late, so I had to do it at the farm. And I thought, you know, these, and I can't swear now because I wanted to say some things about people, but they're going to make so much fun of me for doing it in front of my tractor. And they're going to go on and on and on, but, you know, good for you. So you get to have that forever and a day now. I've been on for 14 years. When we hired you at Hayden, it was very exciting, you coming up from Orange. You did such a wonderful job. You just kept moving up the ladder. Your patience, your calmness has been good for everybody, especially good for me. Your ability to take everything in stride and not get bent out of shape. I think we may have lost Dr. Brent now, and he's going to have to learn how to take jokes about not being able to park and, you know, being so short, and when he wears those high heels, just to make us feel better. But you have been a calming force for us. You've worked so hard, and it's so, I don't know, easy for you to, when you present to us, we know that we're getting the best of the best. We know that everything that you're saying is, you believe is best for the kids, even if I don't always believe it's best for the kids. You allow me to argue with you. I think you actually get mad sometimes, but you don't let it out while we're in a meeting. You know, I hear about it sometimes afterwards. But it's not just me, we are going to miss you terribly. I don't know where the hell you went. Everything, okay, you're over here now. We are going to miss you terribly. Dr. Brent, I think, is back now. He's got huge little shoes to fill. They're just little shoes, but they're huge. And you're a part of this family. I know you're going out there and you're going to be with your family, but you're leaving your family too. Dr. Newman likes to talk about us being a family, and we really are. And you're a huge part of it, and we're going to miss you terribly. And you have to know that you are very much loved in Manassas. Everybody here loves you, and I love you desperately, and I'm going to miss you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Not sure how to follow that, but thank you, Mr. Mary. I appreciate that. And we're going to miss you, Dr. Stone. And with that, may I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Kiefer, second by Mrs. Stevens, I believe, that we adjourn. Mrs. Garza, maybe a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Williams.
Aye.
Vice Chairwoman Kiefer.
Aye.
Mr. Demaria.
Aye.
Mr. Albrecht.
Aye.
Mrs. Seaver.
Aye.
Mrs. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Garza. The motion carries 7-0, and our marathon day has ended. So thank you all for your time, your energy, and your commitment. I appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you as we navigate these crazy times we're in. Thank you all, and have a great evening.